What if Spider-Man was made in the 1950s? Introduction. Imagine this for a moment. What if Spider-Man, one of the most famous superheroes in the world, had been created as a movie in the 1950s instead of the modern era? Today, Spider-Man swings between skyscrapers using incredible CGI, fights giant villains in massive action scenes, and moves with realistic physics that make everything feel believable. But in the 1950s, filmmakers had none of that technology. No computer-generated effects, no motion capture, no digital cityscapes. Everything had to be built by hand. So what would a 1950s Spider-Man movie actually look like? Would it be exciting? Would the suit look convincing? Could Spider-Man even swing through New York without modern special effects? In this video, we're going to travel back in time and imagine how Spider-Man might have looked if Hollywood had tried to make him during the golden age of cinema. We'll compare the suit, the web slinging, the villains, the action scenes, and even the personality of Peter Parker. By the end, you might realize that a retro Spider-Man could have been very different from the hero we know today. The technology problem. The biggest challenge would be technology. Modern superhero movies rely heavily on computers. When Spider-Man swings across the city, most of what you see is created digitally. The buildings, the movement, the camera angles, and even parts of the suit are often enhanced with CGI. In the 1950s, none of that existed. Filmmakers had to use practical effects. That means real sets, miniature models, wires, painted backgrounds, and clever camera tricks. If Spider-Man wanted to swing between buildings, the actor would probably be attached to visible wires while moving in front of a painted city backdrop. To create the illusion of height, studios might build tiny miniature skyscrapers and film them from specific angles. The result would look much less realistic than today's movies, but audiences in the 1950s would likely be amazed by it. Think about classic monster movies from that era. Giant creatures were often portrayed using costumes, puppets, and miniature cities. A 1950s Spider-Man would use many of the same techniques. The Spider-Man suit. Now let's talk about the suit. Modern Spider-Man costumes are made from advanced materials that stretch, reflect light properly, and allow actors to perform complex stunts. The suit looks sleek and athletic. A 1950s Spider-Man suit would be much simpler. It would probably be made from thick fabric similar to a stage costume. The spider symbol might be sewn onto the chest by hand, and the web pattern could be painted directly onto the material. The mask would likely be less flexible, with larger eyepieces and fewer details. Because costume technology was limited, the suit might appear a little baggy instead of skin-tight. Interestingly, that retro look could become part of the movie's charm. Many classic superheroes from old comics had simpler designs, and a 1950s Spider-Man might look more like those original comic book drawings than the modern movie versions do. Peter Parker in the 1950s, Peter Parker himself would also be very different. Today's Spider-Man is often portrayed as a fast-talking teenager who makes jokes during fights and deals with modern problems like social media, school pressure, and technology. In the 1950s, Peter would probably be written as a more serious and polite young man. He might wear a sweater, carry books everywhere, and speak in the formal style common in movies of that era. Instead of worrying about smartphones and online popularity, Peter would focus on school, family responsibilities, and earning money through photography. The famous newspaper job with the Daily Bugle would still fit perfectly into a 1950s setting, because newspapers were extremely important at the time. His relationship with Aunt May would likely be more traditional, with Peter constantly trying to protect and support her while hiding his secret identity. Web slinging without CG. One of the most iconic parts of Spider-Man is web swinging, but how would filmmakers create that effect in the 1950s? The answer is very carefully. The actor might be suspended on cables while a moving background creates the illusion of traveling through the city. For longer shots, filmmakers could use a miniature Spider-Man figure swinging between model buildings. Close-up scenes would probably show Peter shooting a practical web prop from his wrist, while the actual swinging happens in wide shots with stunt performers and wires. The movement would be slower and less acrobatic than modern Spider-Man movies. Instead of flipping through the air at high speed, this version might glide gracefully from building to building. It would look less realistic, but it could still feel magical in a classic Hollywood way. The villain's a superhero is only as good as his villains. So which Spider-Man villains would work best in the 1950s? The Green Goblin would probably be the perfect choice. His costume could be built practically with a real mask, cape, and glider prop. The glider might be suspended on wires or filmed using miniature effects. Dr. Octopus would be much more difficult. Creating 4 moving mechanical arms in the 1950s would require complicated puppetry and engineering. The arms might move more slowly and appear less lifelike than the modern version. The Vulture could also work well because filmmakers could use wires and harnesses to simulate flight. Venom, however, would be nearly impossible. The black alien symbiote relies heavily on modern visual effects. A 1950s Venom would probably just look like a man in a black costume. Because of these limitations, the movie would likely focus on villains that could be created with costumes, makeup, and practical props. Action scenes. Modern Spider-Man movies are packed with huge action sequences. Buildings collapse, trains crash, portals open, and characters fly through the air. A 1950s Spider-Man would be much smaller in scale. The action would focus on fistfights, rooftop chases, and dramatic confrontations. Instead of destroying an entire city, the villain might threaten a laboratory, a bridge, or a newspaper office. The camera would also move differently. Many 1950s films used wider shots and longer takes, so viewers could clearly see the actors performing the action. This means the fights would feel more theatrical and less chaotic. Some people might actually prefer that style because it allows you to follow the action more easily. The music. Another major difference would be the soundtrack. Modern Spider-Man movies use powerful orchestral scores mixed with contemporary music. A 1950s version would likely feature a classic Hollywood orchestra with dramatic brass instruments, sweeping strings, and heroic themes. When Spider-Man appears, the music might play a bold fanfare. During emotional scenes with Aunt May, soft violins would take over. And during battles with the Green Goblin, the orchestra would become tense and dramatic. The music would make the movie feel like an old adventure serial or a classic detective film. The special effects. Let's be honest, some of the special effects would probably look funny to modern audiences. You might see painted skylines, visible wires, smoke machines, and miniature buildings. Explosions would be practical, and the web effects might look like ropes or foam. But here's the interesting part. Practical effects often have a unique charm. Because they are real physical objects, they can feel surprisingly tangible. Many people still love classic movies precisely because of these handmade effects. A 1950s Spider-Man might not look realistic, but it could look creative and memorable. How audiences would react. If Spider-Man had debuted in theaters during the 1950s, audiences would probably be amazed. Superhero movies were not common back then, and seeing a masked hero swing through New York would feel completely new. Children would likely become huge fans, while adults might see it as an exciting adventure film, similar to the serials and comic adaptations of the era. The movie might even inspire sequels, toys, comic tie-ins, and television adaptations decades earlier than Spider-Man actually became a global movie star. It's fascinating to imagine an entire alternate history where superhero cinema began much sooner. Comparing retro and modern Spider-Man. So which version would be better? The modern Spider-Man has incredible visual effects, realistic action, emotional storytelling, and technology that allows filmmakers to bring almost anything to life. The 1950s. Spider-Man would have practical effects, classic Hollywood charm, simpler storytelling, and a unique retro atmosphere. One version is spectacular and technologically advanced. The other is creative, handmade, and nostalgic. Both have something special. Final thoughts. Spider-Man has always been a character about imagination. Whether he's swinging through a modern CGI city or a miniature 1950s New York, built by artists and technicians, the core idea remains the same. An ordinary young man gains extraordinary powers and chooses to use them to help others. And maybe that's why Spider-Man has lasted for so many generations. The technology changes, the costumes change, and the movies change, but the hero himself remains timeless. So, what do you think? Would you watch a 1950s Spider-Man movie made entirely with practical effects? Or do you prefer the modern version with huge action scenes and cutting-edge CGI? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this retro superhero comparison, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and tell me which superhero I should reimagine next. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.